Yeah, that's all right.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming this evening. Thank you to our audience that are here at CBU, and obviously thank you to the participants online. It is nice to see so many people, not only in the room, but online as well. It's quite nice. As we always do for the public lecture series, I would like to start off and acknowledge that Cape Breton University is located in Unama'ki, one of the 7 traditional districts of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This land is governed by the Peace and Friendship Treaties of 1725 and 1779, which were not about the surrender of land or about resources, but about establishing ongoing relationships of peace, respect, and mutual support between the Mi'kmaq and the Crown. I am absolutely delighted to have our speaker with us this evening. He not only is a great mentor to early career researchers like myself, but he is a fabulous scientist. He's asked that I keep his introduction relatively short because there's going to be a lot of history in his presentation this evening. But I would like to say a few things about our speaker. Not only is he a wonderful chemist, but to date he has received over $7 million in research funding and has also been awarded the CBU Teaching Award in a regional AAU Instructional Leadership Award, which really shows the depth of our speaker this evening, not only with his research, but also with his teaching. And I know that we have a lot of his students in the audience this evening. So without further ado, please welcome our speaker this evening, Dr. Matthias Bierenstiel.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And it's with great honor being here and talking about my research and what I've been doing over the past almost 2 decades here at CBU. I have to say, I talked to Alana beforehand. Normally I'm not that nervous, but today when I drove here, this is kind of a little bit special. So what I would like to use this as an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about myself, about the research that I have been conducting here in Unama'ki. Particularly one of the main topic is the project that my co-PI, Duma Young, and I had started in 2013. And I would like to kind of weave this in as well with cultures and stories that is not really traditional to a standard chemistry talk. So with that, really, kind of how did it all start? Well, originally I'm from Germany. I came to Canada on a student exchange in late 90s and met a Canadian and married her and have been since in Canada all the time. I studied at the University of Guelph, transition metal catalysis on sugars and polyalcohols. So organometallic chemistry. Did 1 year postdoc with Marty Cowie at the University of Alberta, and then since 2006 started a tenure track position here at CBU as inorganic chemist and started my research program on looking at metals and metal complexes, and quite exciting. And then things happened and everything went interesting because I got new interests. So I started working with industry partners. We worked on interesting projects on new antibiotics, some tin coating and other smaller projects. And during my first sabbatical, 2013, I was in the cafeteria right at the beginning. And Duma was there. And Duma said, "So what are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm on sabbatical. I'm just, researching and so on." He says, "Would you want to come to pick sweetgrass? I'm taking my students of my Mi'kmaq studies class going to Forshu, and we're picking sweetgrass." Like, okay, I just said yes. I didn't really think too much. I wanted to learn about the culture, wanted to know about sweetgrass. I knew it was medicine. And so, yeah, so off we went. His brother drove the bus with the students there, and I don't never want to go in a bus with his brother. He was driving like crazy. And we had a wonderful time. And at the end of the day, on the drive back, he then told the students and says, oh, by the way, next week, we will be looking at birch bark oil. And I says, like, what is birch bark oil? He says, like, well, we have a campfire and we make this oil out of birch bark. And I said, well, that is chemistry. And there it was. That was the official beginning of our collaboration. And I never thought a million years that I would be doing that, but it was really, really exciting and on a bright new journey that I ended upon. So this kind of talk now today is kind of talking about the summaries and all the different directions that we went. And it's quite exciting. So with that, there's like this one here. I would like to dedicate this lecture here in memory of Danny Paul, an elder here, member 2. He passed suddenly away 2 years ago. It was a big loss for the community. And he was very engaged with the birch bark project. And he always teased me a little bit because he made like these concoctions and always came and said like, you're a chemist, find out what this is. And then following Monday comes like, have you found anything? It's like, that's not how it works. And so we had like very good exchanges on this and basically learning from each other. And so it was a really pleasure to kind of learn cultures and what he is doing. And you will see later on some pictures on what he helped with regards to the birch bark extract. So with all that, this is not only about me, this is really a group thing, and the group is here in Unamagi. I know we had already a land acknowledgement, but I think this is appropriate as well, because here we did all this one here on this beautiful island, the land of fog. Actually, this picture taken is just down from my house, kind of shows very nicely with the fog when you walk in the morning. And one of the resources that we have here is birch. All around us, paper birch, Betula papyrifera is the Latin word for it. Maskwi is the Mi'kmaq term, that's birch, or birch bark is maskwi. And omi, as you will know later on, means gathering or oil. And so Maskwiomin is kind of this extract, this oil obtained from the birch bark. So here is just a small overview of the people that we've been working with. Working here on as a chemistry topic, we work with the community and have community liaison. We have a group about health, and we've done interviews with people using our products. There was a business case study done, and we submitted work on that with regards to that, on kind of how we think about ethical commercialization. We've done some science outreach and educational outreach, and I had some collaborators through Dalhousie University in the chemistry department and pharmacology to help out in understanding what this complex mixture is. As well, at the beginning now, to do this one there, because we started a company, Duma and I co-founded a spin-out company in 2020, right at the beginning of COVID. And we registered it, and so there's now a conflict of interest because I hold a financial stake in that. And we've received great funding and support from various organizations that helped us with it. And it was, we were very proud, Duma and I, and honored to have received the 2021 Discovery Award for Innovation and kind of bringing this to the forefront. But how did it all start? It all started with Duma. Duma is a great individual as an ethnobotanist. He's a lawyer, social activist, and a university professor. But back in the 1990s, he set out to record and document stories from the Mi'kmaq about the Mi'kmaq. He's fluent in Mi'kmaq, and he recorded many stories. And one of these stories was about a mother from the 1920s, so basically 100 years ago. And the story went that the mother had a newborn baby, but she developed some sort of rash on her chest and couldn't nurse the baby, which was very difficult at that time and dangerous, because you need nutrition for the baby. And so the old new midwife, she made this concoction, Maskwio'mi, so some sort of oil extract from birch bark. And then the story goes, it was applied to the chest and mother and baby survived. So that was basically it. What is more about this was only 2 elders knew about this story from the 1920s, one of which has since passed away. So this story was almost lost. And it was kind of Duma's work to then piece together these puzzle pieces on how do you make this? What can we do? And what is this Maskwiomin? And so he found by doing more research that it was basically made in a campfire method. And I'll tell you about that later on in more details, but this is basically putting this together. And by putting all this together, he kind of kept that knowledge alive, because when you have oral traditions and the knowledge keepers pass, and this transfer of knowledge doesn't occur, then the knowledge is lost. So it's really very critical. And this is particularly bad with regards to the harmful policies that Canada had with residential school system, to really kind of destroy that culture and really systemically try to erase that. And so Duma's really great work on that in kind of just rediscovering and kind of keeping this motion alive. And with that, when I kind of joined him there, I'm not Mi'kmaq. I'm a settler. I'm from Europe, and we based our working together methodology on eptuaptmumk, which means two-eyed seeing. And so we had like one eye looking at the indigenous knowledge side, indigenous cultures, Mi'kmaq culture. And the second eye would have been like science and kind of a Western viewpoint. And as we know, stereo vision is better than monovision. And so bringing kind of these 2 different viewpoints together in having a better understanding of what we're doing and what we have to the betterment of all. And this concept was pioneered by Albert Marshall, Albert Marshall and Marina Marshall here on Inunamagi. So this is kind of great to kind of build upon their work, what we were doing. All right, so how is it made? So this is it. So this is actually on Goat Island, near Eskasoni. You see in the middle there's Danny and I, and we were making the extract. So what you do is you dig a little hole, you put a receptacle can in the ground, then you take a larger vessel, you poke holes in the bottom of that, fill that with birch bark, seal it shut with a lid, place it carefully over the receptacle can, and then have a campfire around. And after about 2-3 hours in this process, slowly something is dripping down, and you get this gooey, viscous oil extract thing. And this is where the chemistry happens. So this is really kind of looking at from a reductionist approach. Really, we have chemical compounds that make up the bark, which are solid and polymeric. And in this thermal process, we'll get this kind of chopping up of molecule get this mixture. And that is the process. We published this in 2 publications here that are listed, and kind of just see how this works. It's very labor intensive. The yield is less than 5%, but you get it. It's just a little bit there, and it's also very nice kind of being around with someone like here, Danny, telling stories, looking about the culture, the connection with the people. It was really very eye-opening, and it was very good because you have to kind of talk. And this is one of the takeaways that I got from this project, is really kind of this relationship building is really useful. I can learn from him and others. They can learn from me, and this dialing in of communication is very important. It focused on me, not use technical jargon, and that really benefits the whole project. So when we had this, as a chemist, I was looking like, okay, what is it? What is going on there when I transform, or when this process transform a bark into this extract? And so the first thing was, can I actually make a machine in the lab to kind of build this? And here it is. So this is kind of, looks like a little marshmallow there. And I've worked with 2 colleagues, Raj Kalia and Dr. Urban, and together we built this extraction machine because we wanted to basically mimic the campfire. One was actually a practical reason, where I can't really have a fire inside the lab. So this was kind of a fire hazard thing. But second, it was fire is very inherently difficult to control. And so basically thinking about, hey, can I make an electric oven to mimic the fire, and can I reproduce this? And sure we did. And it was really great. But what it turned out was, initially, this extract was very, very tricky to make, and kind of what can we see that we actually made our extract. And what you will see later on, the batches that we get from the traditional way were antibiotic. And the first batches out of this machine didn't work. So something was different. And was like, oh, okay. So when I looked closer there, we looked, and this comes back to when we had the pan in the ground. Well, there's gravity where something kind of goes down, it drips down. But then the hypothesis was, what if the ground is insulating the product's form and basically protecting it? And so the first thing was, can we build an electric extractor and have additional water cooling with it? So obviously we need to be careful because there's electricity and there's water, so we have to be all careful. And sure enough, once we did that, it worked. And that was really the breakthrough. What we then did, as you will see maybe in this little picture there, we kept on adding more and more height to the whole unit, because we wanted more and more cooling. So there's actually already, this is, I think, version 2.0, and the current version, even these little blocks where it stands on our kind of new metal stands to get this one on. So that was really good. But then talking then with Danny, and really being excited and saying, really, this is really the big thing, that we have kind of this hot conditions of thermolytic, so meaning breaking of bonds using heat and whatnot in this reaction vessel, but also cooling and protecting. And then he said, see, we elders knew all along, the Mi'kmaq people knew all along, Mother Nature, the ground, is actually protecting its medicine. So it's kind of really neat kind of to look at this from this perspective, that it's not rather a cooling and kind of, reducing, further additional reactions, but looking at from this story, and one could see and think that this is a way where people could understand in a different way of what's going on. So that's this one there. So this one here, the story and development of this extractor, that was 5 years in the making. So it's not overnight. It's always you do it, you're doing a little bit, we need more. This was also right away around the time of COVID. So we needed to kind of be separated and kind of was kind of time delayed as well. But that it was not an overnight thing, and this was very empirical. So the second portion part of the project that we had, which was funded by CIHR project, was led by Duma, and it was kind of community outreach. We called it awakening of the knowledge. And so his focus of the project was, can we teach the community how to do the traditional way and kind of embrace that knowledge? And so here you see on the left a group of people from member 2, and here Duma actually in the lab making soaps and smiling because we wanted to combine this. Initially, what he said, kind of when he talked with elders, the traditional way is in order to have like skin ointments and kind of the base creams, that's usually like fat or lard, which can be, bear grease or who's that. Which when we kind of proposed that at first, people in research ethics would have maybe a heart attack, because when we were like bear grease, I'm like, I don't know, weren't really doing that. So no bear were harmed in this project there, and Duma being also funny in a way, he says like, well, he was using goose fat, and so his mother actually said, so are you going hunting? And he says like, oh, I'm going hunting like I always do. I just go to Sobeys and buy a frozen goose. So he just had a meal, got the fat from there, and kind of made the first kind of traditional way of the ointment by basically mixing this extract, which is lipophilic, in the grease in order to kind of make that. We couldn't do that also, and so we thought like at some point, well, maybe we can actually combine it with some science outreach. I at the time was working with kind of soap making, and so we said, well, why can't we just blend that into soaps as well? And so we really had kind of this back and forth and made it into that. And it was a fun event. We showed it to teachers, showed it to students, to community members. And that was basically it, until they kind of came back and they're like, this soap works. And it's like, oh, like my daughter had eczema. She couldn't even go to school. She used your soap and everything is fine and better than ever. We had one individual here, kind of blistered skin, and she's like, can I use that cream? And they're like, it's up to you, kind of, you can do it. This is just an indigenous recipe, but it's not approved by Health Canada whatsoever. And they put it on, and within 24 hours, you can see it's a dramatic improvement for skin. And so ever since, we had like a whole list of indication of what this extract can be used for. And that's when kind of the whole thing started as well, with potential commercializations, because literally people were banging at Duma's door and says, I need more of this cream and I need more of this soap. And Duma, as teacher, then says, I showed you, you can make it. But similar to, we all can make bread in our kitchen, and it's so easy, so much easier to go to a grocery store and buy a loaf of bread there for quality and kind of convenience. And so this is what we wanted kind of to do, and that's how it started. And so this one now led into more research. So I partnered with people in here at CBU with nursing department, under the lead here with Janet Kunke. And I learned much more now about qualitative research. So this was exploratory. We used anecdotal here as a case study. And so this individual here kind of used the cream. He complained that he had skin issues for over 2 decades, started when he was like in his teens. And it actually became so bad that he didn't even want to go to online meetings because he was subconscious about it. And it's really good. And he said nothing ever really worked. There was prescription, it worked a little bit, and then it doesn't work again. And so when he heard about our soap and cream, he kind of just gave it a try. And I mentioned to him, can you please take some pictures? And actually he did, and he came back and said, like, look at that, the skin is gone, you know, and like it hasn't been as great as really ever. And now recently he kind of said, like, actually I don't even need the cream anymore. It seems that it was healed. Obviously this is a case study. So n equals 1, and so we want to kind of develop that more. Based on that case study that came out in 2024, we had more interviews, and so we have it is accepted now. So this is now in press, Wound Care Canada coming out. So where we had 12 interviews and bringing that together and kind of seeing kind of what does this extract do, and what are the indication, and yeah, what can we build upon that? So that was very, very useful. And I've never thought in my life that, you know, as a chemist, that I would be learning about qualitative research. So with that, let's go a little bit into chemistry. So what is known about birch bark, about, you know, up to 20–25% of birch bark is made up of compound pentacyclic. So this is this 5-membered ring organic compound, betulin. Betula is the Latin word for birch, and so betulin basically means compound from birch. It has a lot of pharmacological properties. It's known to be antibacterial. There's some anti-inflammatory, potential anti-cancer activities, and you know, much more on this. The problem with this particular compound is it is very low water soluble, which actually makes sense because it's the protection mechanism of the tree against invaders, such as bugs and whatever, bacteria and whatnot. And you wouldn't want that compound to be kind of washed away if it rains. So it's very, very kind of well made for this setup from kind of evolutionary terms. And there have been lots of research done in the 1990s of these compounds of, can we solubilize it into water, so putting some sulfonyl groups on and whatnot. And so there have been quite an interest. And so the first thing was like, is it that betulin is the active ingredient that we have in our compound, in our mixture? So because I have worked on a different project with a company about an iron binding polymer that has been used for antibiotic, so I thought, like, well, why can't we use our extract and test it out? And so this one here, as you see, is one of the first tests and showed antibiotic activity. This one is actually against a MRSA strain, so methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, also known as one of those hospital superbugs. And the little disc here, black in the middle, is 6 millimeter diameter. That is the disc that contains 1 drop of our extract. And you see there's kind of a wide ring around in this Petri dish. And in that ring, there is no bacterial growth. And that's kind of really neat because this was actually one of the original discoveries of Alexander Fleming when he discovered penicillin in 1921, early 20th century. And so kind of used kind of that technology to kind of see that and test this one out. So this was the first test. And because we did that with the batch that we made from the traditional method, and also compared that with our electric extractor. So that's kind of one of the first set of experiments that we could see and really say there is some antibiotic property on that. The question then was, okay, what is the active ingredient? All right, so we used technology instrumentation here at CBU, which is UPLC QTOF MSMS. So ultra performance liquid chromatography, quantitative time of flight, and we used mass spec of mass spec for analysis. So that's kind of this little word salad there. These, whatever, 12 letters there are $1 million. So this was kind of one of the equipment that we got through CFI. It was like really neat to kind of look at that. We had students, and this one here was the graduate student Vlada, who came to Canada from Ukraine, fleeing the Ukrainian war and completing her degree here. And so she was looking at this one there. And so this is one of the earliest ones. And as you see, there's lots of peaks. So meaning there are lots of compound there. And the betulin peak is at 11:05 minutes coming out. So we could prove that, but it's very, very minor. So we can't really see what's going on. So we know that there are more than 200 compounds. And so the ultimate question is, what is the mode of action? What makes it, what makes this extract work? We still don't know, but there is some more with philosophy on that. So what we've done as well was we looked at other compounds that we could identify. One concern was cresols. Cresols is a category of compounds that can have potential cancer properties. And so we were like wondering, like, ooh, is it there? And they can be made in combustion and pyrolytic processes. Victor, chemistry student in his honors thesis project, he looked at that, and we measured that. We actually could find that there were cresols in there. There are 3 versions: ortho, meta, and paracresol, and they were in there. However, the good thing there is the quantities are really, really small. As Paracelsus said, it's not the poison that kills you, it's the dosage. So it's really small, and so the amount of cresols that is in the extract is the same as if you would have a cup of coffee. So that kind of was kind of nice. So like, yeah, it cures your skin, oh, you die. So no, this is not the case. So that was the concern. We also did some Ames testing. We sent that out. Ames test is a test for if it's mutagenic, does it change the DNA? Because this tar, there have been some use of petroleum tar back in the 1950s and 60s for skin issues, but those had to be kind of taken away by Health Canada because of carcinogenic stuff. So we were kind of worried really at the beginning, is there a worry on this? It is not, so which was really good. So we could prove that it was negative, and that's a positive thing. So this is, it wasn't. And that kind of goes as well. We found that one researcher in Australia looked at pine tar, and while it has kind of this tar substance, also this was not carcinogenic. So that was a big thing at the very early on to kind of say, like, well, we are safe. Also, the root is, not oral; it's on the skin, so it's less dangerous and hazardous if it's done that way. So that was a very, really like, yes, we can actually go for that, and look and help people. All right, and that's really kind of gets me kind of to the second part. We're kind of looking at commercialization, because people came to us and came to Duma and said, like, here, we want more. We were talking and kind of, well, something, kind of, this is clearly something good. What can we do with this? And so commercialization came about. Well, if someone makes it, someone can buy it. So that's kind of there. But we were very careful to honor the traditions. And so Duma was a very good conduit and partner with the community, had the trust of the community as community member. And so we were consulting the elders, and because they're like, would someone want to go forward with this? We were willing to kind of give it away to people and kind of, but we couldn't really find someone who was interested in kind of going forward with this. And so at one point, him and I, we just looked at each other. So like, it's almost unethical not to continue, because we had now all these few anecdotal stories that it really helped people's skin. And so kind of, what do we do with this? And so he consulted again with elders, and they came back and says, we have to do the good way, the right way, and so that everyone benefits. So, and that is the mission of Maskwiomin. We started Maskwiomin 1 week after the COVID lockdown in 2020, and we could do that all online. And I was at home, and Duma was at home, and so I was working out of my kitchen in my garage, building this. So the first thing was kind of, what can we do? First is, what is the regulatory aspect? I had no idea about Health Canada, and how can we sell it? Are we even allowed to sell it? What documentation do we need? And we found that Betula papyrifera bark extract is a registered entity under cosmetics. And so we were able to sell our first products in 2021 in Ziploc bags, actually, and with Health Canada's approval. There is some interesting, kind of thought about that, because Health Canada, wants to make sure that the compounds are safe and efficacious. If you want to buy something, it needs to work. It kind of makes total sense there. But if you look at kind of from a different perspective, here is an indigenous medicine that the Mi'kmaq people had for hundreds of thousands of years, and they need white man approval to do this. It's complex. It's really complex that way. It's fine. We can sell it. The regulation with cosmetic is that we cannot have any claim. So we are not allowed to say this heals eczema and this there, because it's not approved as a natural health product. It falls under cosmetic. But we are allowed to say one of our customers has these things. So it's kind of this gray zone there. So yeah, so we started. We're now 5 years in, so we're really going. I calculated the other day that to date, we have probably served 20,000 to 25,000 people who have sold our soaps and creams. And we're kind of progressing small and slowly. We have a run of understanding with member 2, with the company. We need to revisit that and kind of going for the next step of what can we do. We're slowly growing, and yeah, so it's an ongoing process, very similar as the principle of truth and reconciliation. It's really kind of figuring things out to do the right thing and how to go about. I brought a little some sample here. Kind of soap. Yeah, kind of skincare. Let's see those. Where we can do this. All right, but doing this that was again something completely new for me as a chemist, because now I suddenly were looking at webinars about entrepreneurism and starting a company and how does it work with marketing and regulation. And I'm like, I'm just a chemist, I want to do the chemistry. And then we were doing well, my daughter here, you can remember in the kitchen and kind of doing some stuff. Yeah.
How much is this thing?
We sell anywhere from $10 to $50 there. And yeah, so the first one was in Ziploc bags. Then the blue logo there, this was designed by a chemist on ChemDraw, because I don't have a designer. And then we got like a designer, and then we got money, and then we got our first online store, and we got some more and more funding. COA was very helpful. Invest Nova Scotia was excellent. Through the CHR project, we could bring in business and kind of thinking about what is ethical commercialization. And then in 2022, I met Olena. She's a business student, or was a business student in postbac program here at CBU, and she also led the Ukrainian war. And she helped out a little bit as a student project, and she is fantastic. She has like 20 years experience with business in Ukraine, and so now she is now full-time COO of Maskwiomin and kind of keeps it going. And without her, we wouldn't be here. So this is kind of really great. And when I told her that we sold $200 worth of products, I was like, kind of, so what? I was like, oh, great. Like, we need to do this. So we are now in almost 100 stores across the country. We have one store in the US. Obviously now with the whole thing about Trump and kind of the stupid tax thing and tariffs, we have just simply stopped shipping there because it's just a pain. But we'd like to sell more and kind of look at that. And so one of the next phases of the company is kind of looking at different products. We have soaps, we have creams, we're looking at liquid shampoo, and kind of looking at other stuffs, and that's really exciting. We have also, I kind of saw that Nicoletta is actually on there. So we started with the company, some collaboration with Dr. Faraoni out of the University of Acadia, where we're looking at tick and mosquito, because there can be some repellency on that. So stay tuned. And of course, this is now again with regulatory. This is not Health Canada. This is now PMRA, the Pest Management Regulatory Agency, which needs to go in a different way. Oh yeah, yay! Well, it has to be safe. Like this is like, of course it has to be, but like I don't. Yeah.
So there's all that, like, do you have to buy a license and pay them and everybody gets a
It's
cut?
not buying, it has proving that it works and how it works and so on. But this is really kind of the first one there, and then it's step by step. So it's costly and kind of all this, and yeah. So that's one thing. The other stuff is what we want to do is really bring back and really say like this is actually a natural health product, so NHP. And so in order to have like NHP recognition, we need to have clinical trials to really say this is efficacious against either a placebo or another, standard topical treatment. But in order to do that, we need kind of the groundwork, and this is where the anecdotal stories are so important, because it's like a chicken and the egg, kind of what starts first is like, you have to show that it works, but because you have to show that it works, it has to first show that it's safe, and then how do you show that? And so this is how we kind of built this. So this is still a few years in the making on that. So this is very exciting. I learned a lot because there's a lot about communication, there's a lot about logo development. I learned a lot that lawyers make a lot of money, kind of logo and trademarking. and then they charge twice because it has to be in US and Canada. So yeah, so there's your kind of stuff there. We were recently featured, well, it came out it's in the spring, Land and Sea, Dawn Wells, who is Mi'kmaq, and she's a producer of Land and Sea, and so she visited Duma and me last summer and says, I would love to make an episode about Mi'kmaq medicine. Would you like to talk? I thought, okay. Didn't really think too much about it. And so we were actually featured here in CBC documentary. It's on YouTube. You just need to Google Land and Sea Mi'kmaq medicines. Here you see Lulan, elder in residence here at CBU. He kind of helps us out. And it's a really neat 20-minute episode on these medicines and how it works. So that's with that. Now coming a little bit back, so kind of is how does it all fit together, and what did change quite a bit? So initially I had kind of the European view as a chemist, where it's basically you take a natural product, you find the main ingredient, you isolate it, find out how it works, and so there's a drug, and that's how it is. And that doesn't work for this, because there is not one compound in there. It's a multitude. It's more than 200. And just to think about this, if you have a deck of cards with 52 cards, and if you shuffle it, so the permutation of 52 compounds is more than the number of atoms in our solar system. And we don't have 52 compounds, we have more than 200. So it's like, how do we approach this? So it's kind of, you cannot have a reductionist approach. It's impossible. But this is where the light seeing process comes in. We don't have to have one, we have more. And I think this is actually why we have this big variety about skin conditions and the effectiveness, because some compounds will be effective against antibiotic. We've proven this. We don't know which ones they are, but we know it is. Anti-inflammatory, we know it's anti-pain. We definitely know it's anti-itch. If someone has like itchy skin and you put it down, it stops itching. It's like one of our customers got back to us and he says like, I want to thank you so much. And I'm like, okay. He said, I was just talking to my father. He has a skin condition. And for 3 weeks, he couldn't sleep because he had to scratch all night, all day. And he used a cream and he said he had his first restful night. So it's like very, very powerful and kind of there. So we know that it works. We don't know which compounds they are. What we do is we can have sort of batches and kind of ranges of what we think is the amount. And so many people ask, how do you know that this is the right? Like, I don't know, but it works right now. And I learned enough that we changed a few things and then you have to kind of redo everything. So it's kind of, we have to kind of be stuck with this. So that was kind of really, really neat. And that was, yeah, that was it. And now the next slide is now something that that's the first to be publicly disclosed, because I was approached months ago by someone from Europe who says like, I read about your birch bark extract. Can you tell me more about this? And so I'm like, sure. And he was an archaeologist, because he actually found, this is Tjark. So he's German now, he's actually in the UK doing his PhD in archaeology. And he said they found residue on 60,000-year-old like spear tips, stone spear tips, that is from birch. This is not Papyrifera, which is the paper birch of North America. This is Pubensis, which is the European birch. By the way, there are 52 different birches all around the world. He said they have evidence that, in this case, it was not only Homo sapiens, it was Homo neanderthalis, that they used fire and created that. And this is kind of a sticky substance, which it is sticky. And so archaeology thought that it's just simply a glue. And he then thought, could it be that this glue has also other properties? I'm like, oh, sure. So he made a tiny drop of the European birch bark extract using only rocks, not a metal box. Send it to my lab. Here, kind of this one there. This is actually paper from the manuscript. It's under review. Hasn't been published yet, but hopefully soon. And as you see, it kind of similar, kind of a ground in the ground, and they use kind of the birch kind of wrapped in and of itself. The yield is atrociously small, with like less than 0.1% or so. It's just like one drop or so. And we found that it is effective a little bit against gram-positive bacteria.
Wow.
So we can actually think that hafting agent is the official terminology. The glue can also have medicinal properties. And he then said as well, they have found bone fractures of these hominid species that like a broken hip, but the broken hip lived for 10 more years. So clearly that individual couldn't walk, but that group of Neanderthals kind of looked there and really cared for that. And maybe, I mean, you can think, if you have like campfire, you have bark, you have gooey stuff, it sticks, they don't have latex gloves. Maybe they use it for whatever smearing on the body. Maybe that has influence also for mosquito bites, because if you smear it on, that kind of fits all together. And this is where I came about the term deep time research, because clearly we don't know what happened 60,000 years ago. However, we can reasonably assume that this could have happened that way. So I'm actually going to meet Tjark next week again, and kind of looking for more funding and kind of see how we can explore that. Obviously, that is different. This is not kind of what with the Mi'kmaq, kind of this is kind of really kind of cultures around, the world, and kind of thinking about this. So this is really exciting. So how did I know that as an inorganic chemist, I would actually talk to an archaeologist one time and have a paper on this. So I think the time is enough stories. So with that, I would like to conclude my public lecture. Been talking quite a bit. I'm looking forward for any questions, but this extract Maskwiomin is a wonderful topical skin ointment, and we really only know a little bit about it. It's a great example of kind of how we honor truth and reconciliation and embrace the knowledge that the people of these lands have gotten over 1,000 years, and the wonderful kind of opportunities, and working together and kind of making people healthier with better skin. Thank you. Walala.
Are there any questions?
Yeah.
I remember when I was in high school, I did a paper on the effect of natural antibiotics versus like produced ones. And you gave me a sample of the oil, and I ended up using it, and I found effect against a gram-positive species of bacteria. I only had one kind of bacteria that I ended up using. And then I know you mentioned the MRSA, it also had effect against that. Is there any specific kind of bacteria that you find it's most effective? Because I know like MRSA is quite different than, I used a gram-positive bacillus, so it was really different. Is there any that's particularly good for?
We know that it works for gram-positive and gram-negative, and some better than others. When you do kind of these studies, you have to, do like 50 or 100 different strains. We haven't done that yet. And the reason is because we were still tweaking other stuff. So if you do like 5 and then you tweak, and then well, those 5 are no good anymore. So we have to repeat it. So we kind of have to kind of get there. This is kind of an early indication, and then yes, we need to kind of look into that. Yeah.
I had a question about, I think it was your 7th slide, if you're able to go back to that one.
Whatever slide 7 is, okay.
So basically just on the slide, there was a picture of your of the extraction unit or the pyrolysis unit.
Yes,
And then next to that, there was the, magic extract.
yes,
Yeah, this is the one right here.
yes.
So I guess my question is just, like, aside from the magic extract, did this process yield any other products?
Well, there is some ash or like kind of stuff coming out of that, carbon stuff. I'm not really interested too much in that, but yeah. Well, Dr. Macquarie is using a similar machine there to look at the solid residue. So yes, you can use it as a torrefaction or pyrolytic reactor in order to just make the solids. And those can have all other properties, so. Was looking at the liquid.
So we actually have 2 questions online. Smew, I'm gonna get you to unmute yourself to ask the question if you, oh, you did.
Yeah. Can you hear good?
Yeah.
Question. I just wanted to ask one, as an inorganic chemist, have you looked much into any metals coming through in the oil?
Well, we didn't find any metals in there, but there was the lead medical scientist on a completely different, like iron binding polymer project. Bruce Hoban, unfortunately, passed away last year. He always said, like, maybe it has like metal binding properties as a function of mode of action. So right now I think we've done one ICP-MS and basically couldn't really find anything in there other than like maybe a little bit of sodium. No, there's not really much metals in there. But who knows, maybe in our system it does something with it. That will be really cool. That will be going full circle, so.
And
Yeah.
we have one more here in the room at SMU, if that's all right to just jump ahead.
Yeah, please.
Yes, I have a question. How do you treat the bark to start with? Do you remove the epiphytes and lichens? Because if you don't, I'm not surprised that you have such a broad spectrum of compounds, many of which, of course, are antibiotics. And have you found a difference between the amount of oil that you get from the bark from the top of the tree or a bottom of the tree, etc.?
Very good question. So we carefully wash the bark and make sure that it's as clean as possible, and we'll removal any lichen kind of if it's really there. So we don't know whether it's from that. It reminds me of some of the students here. You need to watch, what's it, Medicine Man, 1991 movie, Sean Connery.
I think so.
I think it went straight to DVD, but it's really good because it's about some anti-cancer agent in the Amazon forest, and they think it's a plant, but it's actually contamination by ants of the sugar that was used for whatever the extraction process. So we don't know whether that is it. I don't think so. As far as whether top or bottom of the tree, that was actually the first time someone says that. We thought about live and fallen down trees. We could not find any much difference in terms of when we look at the GC, like the chromatogram, they're fairly similar in overlap in our kind of natural variances. So right now, I don't think that matters. We did look once at chaga, and that is something completely different. So actually we put some chaga into our extractor, ran it through, and it's something like day and night. It's like completely different. So we don't know. Right now, we don't know. It works.
Helga, do you want to unmute yourself? Oh, you are already. Okay,
I
good.
am unmuted. That was a very interesting talk. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. My questions are a bit in the same vein as the last ones you just had, to do with the actual state of the birch trees from which you get the bark, and how constant your fingerprint, your chromatographic fingerprint is from preparation to preparation. Because you showed one, But if you have any variation in the state of the plant from which you take the bark, you may also end up having variation in the fingerprint, the chromatographic fingerprint that you obtain.
Right now, we define it so that the ranges are our ranges in order to fit it together. So probably within plus minus 5%. Yeah. As far as collecting, Hurricane Fiona really helped. So it was stuff that fell down. So we kind of collected quite a bit from that. I didn't go too much about the yield. So the extractor actually has more than 50% yield, so which helps a lot. And we have like less than 1% in our creams, which is kind of standard for any kind of creams. So I think I calculated roughly if everyone in Canada has one of our creams, we need a literal ton of bark, which is basically a pickup truck full. So it's not much. So it's really a high value product. Quality assurance, yeah, this is what we're doing right now is basically take a big batch and then combine them and have kind of one thing that it's kind of all kind of consistent. So that's what we do right now. Yeah.
So the characteristics of the bark that make it so good for this preparation that you're using, are they related to the characteristics that make it good for canoes? Because all the waterproofness, all the extraordinary flexibility that it has, is that somehow related to this 25% betulin content in the bark? I was fascinated by that one molecule being responsible for 25% of the weight. That's incredible.
It is, and other stuff is, obviously there's cellulose and hemicellulose. I don't know. Like clearly our extract is chopped down, kind of for the non-chemists. There's some, larger compounds, and kind of, we know the mass is anywhere between 150 to 500 grams per mole. So this is kind of a typical, kind of mass that we see. So yeah, it's hydrophobic. Makes sense, because with raining, and so we have the tar there.
But it's also good for canoes.
Well, it's like, well, you can use it as, kind of waterproofing. So that's kind of there. And that has been used, like bark in general, kind of have been used kind of in this type of torrefaction process, for kind of tar making. What is special about this is really kind of that medicinal thing, and this is kind of a story that Duma had. Yeah, so it would have been lost. And I think this comes back to kind of the whole two-eyed seeing. No pharmaceutical company in their mind would say, how about we come up with a compound for like, a new product for skin, let's throw in 200 different compounds and use that. This is a completely different approach. But I think for complex skin conditions, what you probably need, someone has like one underlying conditions, but it's itchy, you scratch, you break the skin, and you have infection, and obviously there's inflammation. And so now you have like a host of symptoms. And so it's that approach, that kind of divergent holistic approach, by saying maybe we need more than like whatever polypharmaca in this one compound that does. So there is something there. I mean, if you think about wine or beer or, even coffee, we don't drink it just for the ethanol or for the caffeine, but there are so many other compounds that are beneficial for one's health. And so that kind of alludes to that. So maybe someone else can look into that and kind of use that and help medicine push forward.
Are there any other questions online? I don't see any other hands. No? No more? No, I don't think so. Okay, I just want to say thank you again for that wonderful talk. And thank you everyone online and everyone who came out this evening at CBU to listen to the NSIS public lectures. The first Monday of every month, we have a different lecture, so please look online to see what's next. Thank you again.
That's interesting.